Now, ladies and gentlemen, the main dish of today's conference. We will start with our session with our first topic, Securities Commission Financial Planning Fire Chat. For our moderator for the discussion, we have Ms. Kaur, who brings with her a wealth of knowledge and understanding about the regulatory framework of Malaysia's capital markets. She has been with the Securities Commission for over 25 years and been involved in many areas of industry oversight, including supervision, product development, and the formulation of policies for the industry, particularly in relation to investment management and stockbroking. She has also been involved in various projects involving the financial planning industry. For our first guest speaker, we have Puan Salma B. Muhammad Mydin, the Executive Director of the Securities Commission Malaysia, responsible for corporate strategy and planning, economics research, as well as markets and products. An important focus of SC's agenda is the longer-term sustainability development of the broader capital market. Puan Salma manages a team responsible for formulating the overall planning and strategy of the SC, driving initiatives to enhance market efficiency, vibrancy, liquidity and competitiveness, and analyzing economic development trends and its impact to the capital market. She is a board member of the Audit Oversight Board, the Finance Accreditation Agency, and Malaysian Venture Capital and Private Equity Development Council. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's start our first session for today. Ms. Kaur, your stage is yours.
Thank you, Joshua, for the introduction. Hi, Salma. Welcome.
And thank you, Jasmine.
Yeah. So, I think this morning we've heard a lot of talk as well, in the opening address. And this has also been mentioned many times, even by the chairman of the Securities Commission. And I think today we are facing such unprecedented times. There is a lot of focus around health, physical health, with the COVID situation that we are facing, mental health, and also increasingly there's also a lot of financial health being talked about because there's been so much of disruption to work, to businesses, and to opportunities as well. So in the space of all that we are facing today, how do you see the financial planning industry? I mean, in terms of the role that they can play at times like this, and particularly the value that they can bring to the general public in terms of how do they manage themselves through this crisis and moving forward. Your thoughts, please?
Thank you, Jasmine. Thank you again to AFA for the invitation. I would want to thank AFA for including SC in this conversation at an important juncture of the state of the country, the world. I think enough has been said about where we are in terms of the enormity of the situation. I think many large words that have been used. I think what started off as a health crisis transmitted to an economic crisis, and in some parts it has even become a financial crisis. I think that's where I believe financial management, be it advisory, planning, comes into play. I think financial management is essentially assisting individuals, investors, non-investors, ordinary population in managing their financial situation, looking at how they can manage their financial situation for financial stability. And we have enough data to show that, that the aging population, even before the financial crisis, I think one of the areas that the SC is very focused on is retirement planning. We championed private retirement scheme several years ago. And I think our survey shows that retirement planning in Malaysia generally, while it is considered around the age of 44 by most Malaysians, it's far too late to consider retirement planning at this stage. And again, I won't go into data that shows about the inability of people to manage their life prior to retirement. And a lot of people talk about savings happening early on, that being incorporated into education. I think many jurisdictions that we compare with, most developed jurisdictions, financial planning happens very early. it is embedded in their lifestyle, embedded in part of the education stream. And that's where I believe the financial planning industry or financial advisory industry would be best positioned for. One very quick thought I wanted to share on the Securities Commission's approach in financial planning. I think when we look at the various industry that is under the SE's jurisdiction, stockbroking, fund management, I think these industries are maturing. What's happening in these industries, greater innovation is happening. I think our keynote speaker talked about the need to innovate and digitize. I think that those industries are rapidly picking up only because investors are disintermediating. They're going directly to what they're looking for. They're looking for investment solutions, the idea that self-directing is happening. And a lot of technology is assisting investors do that, either through digital investments, robo-advisory. So when the SC looks at the landscape, where we feel the largest growth will come from would be in the advisory space. So I believe that is a particular area that we would want to focus on, holistic advice for investors and for the general population.
Okay, that's a very interesting point that you brought up. There are three aspects that are coming out from it. I mean, we talk about retirement planning, and today what we're seeing is it's like there are parts of the population that can't even think about retirement planning. They have to meet their basic needs today, the basic challenges today. And then, you know, there's been a lot of talk in the media as well, even like proposals to allow retirement monies from account 1 to be withdrawn because they are having really critical financing needs. Do you see a role that financial planners can play in this immediate space? There's one point that came up in what you talked about. The other one is you mentioned about innovation, right, and the disintermediation of businesses. But financial planning is still seem to be a face-to-face kind of a business. So how would you see financial planning industry incorporating, being innovative in this space, you know, in terms of using technology to drive their business? So I thought that maybe, you know, we could just talk about, at the point, maybe talk about those 2 points.
Yeah, and then those are very critical points as we look at the developing a strategy in this space. And I think you picked up the very essence of what's happening, not just in Malaysia and I guess globally.
Yeah.
It's very polarized. You have people who are finding it difficult to manage. I think the COVID crisis, I suppose, just accelerated the number of job losses, the need for industry to innovate, to offer their services differently. At the same time, we are also seeing a population that are looking for higher risk investments. So you do have a very polarized investing population or general population, people who do have a little bit more to take a bit more riskier investment. And I think that's where financial planning or advisory, financial management would come in. Our focus on advisory is where we want a holistic approach to advice being provided, regardless of whether it is intermediated through automation or individually. And yes, I agree. I think Malaysians generally prefer face-to-face intermediation, especially if they're parting with money, and rightly so, because I think any crisis brings about a lot of people who want to take advantage. Scams can also be on the rise. So I think it's wise for Malaysians who want to still maintain the face-to-face. And I think this industry is very versatile. I think perhaps what needs to happen is certainly a lot more automation needs to happen. So when we look at advisory as a segment, we think about how can it be delivered. What aspects of the advisory service can be delivered through automation? Is it a front-end tool of helping investors do simple calculation? And there are lots of applications that already do that. How do you incorporate that into a longer-term planning? Because I think financial planning is able to each of us have unique circumstances. We come from different background, we have different life goals, and I think that's where the financial planning industry can match what you are able to manage out of your goals and life plans and for future planning. So I think essentially for us, advisory is one of those sectors that we think is the future of the capital market.
Right.
It encompasses, I see it as the front end to anything else that's happening at the back end. Fund management with their product design, stockbroking with the range of stocks that's available. I think that's quickly just my thought on where we see advisory happening.
Right. I can see where you or the SC is coming from, because when we talk about financial planners, they're actually individuals. And we want to actually correlate that as well with the point that you made about holistic advice. So this is where I presume that they can come in because they are agile enough, they are nimble enough, and they are able to, rather than cookie cutter kind of advice being given, they can tailor it to each person's individual circumstance and also the individual challenges that they are facing, and their ability to plan, whether it's for their medium term or the longer term needs. So I can see how they can be agile and also with the relevant competencies and product knowledge that they have. Just now you talked about a holistic approach, holistic advice. And I know that looking at some of the thoughts that have been coming up from the SC, there's been a lot of work that has been done and continues to be done, and SC has got a very clear strategic plan, for the development and the growth of the financial planning industry. Could you share some thoughts on this strategic trust or the approach that SC has in growing this particular space of the capital market?
Yeah, certainly, and I think that's an important development that happened this year. I think just as a little bit of a background, as I said, we are looking at where the next growth trajectory will come from in the capital market, and I think it's the capital market that's going to straddle into the financial market, because I think you don't limit ability of someone to invest within just one particular sector. It really depends on what their needs are. So looking at that, against that backdrop, we looked at some of the objectives that we would want to achieve. We want to see an expansion of investors or clients or consumers that can be accessed in this segment, financial planning, financial advisory. We looked at the range of activities that the actual financial planners are able to undertake. I think very importantly is the ability to undertake holistic advice. In order to deliver that holistic advice, the financial planning industry, financial advisory industry must be able to access a wide range of, products, investments, and with that in mind, we embarked on a series of discussion, and here I really do want to acknowledge the various discussions that happened with the range of associations and the commitment that the associations showed from late last year when we started talking about what would be next growth trajectory for this industry. As a result of which we developed a joint action plan with the financial planning industry, and I think critical to this is the public-private partnership. I think that's the way to go, where the private sector is coming in with solutions that work for them. What is it? What would be their needs? And the regulator is raising what would be our regulatory concerns now. If you're looking for an expansion of activity, that has to be complemented with what is it? What do you have? What does it have to be complemented with? I think it fits nicely when we do have those conversations and we are facilitating development. So in March this year, we worked on a joint action plan. I understand that you will be going into a little bit more detail subsequent to this on the joint action plan, and the commitment of the association working together with the SC can be seen in the results of the joint action plan. And almost immediately, what happened was, and as you highlighted, the chairman of the Securities Commission made an announcement recently about the ability of financial planning now to intermediate more than just one segment of the investing opportunity, which is traditionally unit trust, and is now expanded into several other asset class, namely securities and unlisted bonds. And I think why we think that that's critical goes back to the point that I talked about. It needs to be holistic. Of course, this is subject to fulfilling various competency requirements, because we cannot compromise on that. I think every opportunity needs to be provided for this channel to expand its services. It must be met with competent standards. I think complementing this, the other area that the industry and the Securities Commission embarked on was looking at the level of professionalism, and I think that's central to the financial advisory and planning industry. I looked at today's program, and it's filled with the need to have professionalism and conduct standards, and it is an industry that champions that. I think it's an industry that has various conducts principles that in managing an investor's portfolio. So I think that's the other work program that we have embarked on, or we have started. I think there are two critical work programs. Again, one is on what more should a financial planner be able to do in carrying out holistic advice, and complement to that, what should a financial planner be embracing in terms of conduct. I think we go very much on a principle base. The Securities Commission has spoken about that a number of times in many channels. The need to be fit for purpose, the need to be proportionate, looking at the size. I think within the financial planning industry, you have various models. You have a bank bag, you have a broking bag, you have fund management bag, and you have standalones. I think we want to enable various models to operate. What's important is to enable a lot more interlinkages between them, and those interlinkages are properly managed for conflict issues, from a risk management point of view, and priority for the investors. And this is an industry that often speaks about the priority for the investors.
So, sorry. You talk about this joint action plan and this public-private partnership that was set up, and I think that it's something that SE needs to be commended on. Like where you go out and you also talk to the industry closely as to what needs to be done, and to have a joint development plan for moving the industry forward. And with this joint action plan, was it with all the associations, or was there just one or two associations that SE was working with? Were you looking at an industry-wide approach and an industry-wide recommendation?
And that's a good point. I think where we were coming from is, if you look at the investor's perspective, investor will be neutral. What product is intermediated by which firm? So yes, it was certainly with the support of all the key associations. And I think I also want to acknowledge the fact that the Securities Commission has a very good working relationship with Bank Negara. We have over the years looked at how do we facilitate a lot more development in the financial advisory industry. I think Securities Commission and Bank Negara are also very active in the investor education, financial literacy network, and I think this is arising from it's a component of complementing that. I think the need to offer a range of advice and services to investors, and yes, the associations came together. The associations drove a lot of the thinking together with us in terms of what would be the common solutions for the industry. Because I think if you look at advisory as a segment, we realize there are various components. It would be, understand your client's needs, understand what solutions would you be able to offer to the clients. But equally importantly would also be, what kind of investment executions are you able to do? I think this is where cross associations would be necessary. It cannot be just segmentized into one. I mean, you know, insurance, capital market product, banking products, anything in between, alternatives, private equity, for the higher net worth investors who are looking for more riskier assets, who are able to understand those assets.
So I suppose at the end of the day, clients come first, regardless of who they are dealing with, but it is their interest that always has to be upheld. So from what I hear, the joint action plan and this collaboration that SE has going on with the industry, the recommendations that have come out is the first bucket is widening the space in terms of the kinds of products that financial planners can incorporate into their financial advice to clients. So it becomes a lot more holistic rather than very singular product side of it. The other side is also widening the space to get more people to recognize the need for a financial plan and to come on board and to get good advice for them. And of course, underpinning all of this as we move forward, as we broaden professionalism, integrity, treating clients fairly. I think all these are paramount for the industry and to build trust and confidence in the industry. So looking at these two, moving forward, what other areas do you think that the SC would be looking into in terms of driving the industry forward, whether it's from the SC's perspective or in partnership together with the industry associations?
So very quickly, I think on the first area of the expansion of products, I think a lot more details will be coming out from the SC through a technical note that will be issued. This is to support the policy statement made by the chairman several weeks ago. I think to your question about what else should we be looking for, we will be outlining a little bit more detail on the joint action plan. I think there are several key objectives, 5 key objectives with about 11 recommendations. And talent is critical within that recommendation. We're going to be working with industry to see how do we further build that talent pipeline. It's something that the industry, the various associations have been working on themselves anyway to ensure that there's continuity, there's interest. But the regulator is coming in to see what more can be done to propel that interest, be it at a graduate level, be it at a more transition level. Say, for example, people who are within banking who are looking to pursue their own career themselves. So the ability to have your own setup, banking, insurance, capital market intermediaries that are looking to have set up. So we are looking at the various things that can be done in that space. One critical area that I must laud the industry for this, that the industry is proposing is coming together to look at almost an investor protection aspect of it. And that is to, again, complement the various developmental work that's being done. As you would know, Jasmine, you are familiar with what we always look at. We look at the 3 bubbles: self-regulation, market regulation, and the regulators' role. I think here I would say significantly the market and self-regulation is growing. That bubble, I think you would be familiar at the 3 bubbles we often look at in the past. And I must say that it really is the market taking control of it themselves.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I can see that happening, and also the way that SC is approaching this, it's in partnership, and and that is where the needs. What is it that the industry needs? What they need to drive it forward, and of course, SC looking at the investor protection side of it. The other one that keeps coming up, and I'm just looking at the time, and to see how much longer we can keep you here. It's not often we get to have a direct chat with you. But looking at this, one of the things that has come up, and SC has shown its concerns as well in this area. When we have times like these, investors can get very vulnerable. And sometimes they are vulnerable, sometimes they are desperate, sometimes it could be greed. We never know what drives this behavior. And then they can fall prey to illegal schemes, to scams. So how is SC approaching this I know SE does a lot of investor education, and then there is also now the network, the FAN network. So I know it does a lot of investor awareness, but specifically on these scams, how is SE approaching it? How can the financial planning industry help in this space?
And as I mentioned just now, I suppose you're right in pointing out the range of work that's being done by the SE through our consumer and investor office, and it ranges from looking at complaints that come up, complaints and investor office. It looks at the range of complaints that come up, what can be done. It also is very proactive. It aggressively undertakes a lot more outreach in the last several years across the country. Even in many parts of the country, there was a program, in fact, last year in East Malaysia, and they were going to run several more programs, but I guess the current situation has prevented it. But the last InvestSmart program was done virtually, and a lot of those outreach are still happening. I think critical, the formula, in fact, is not very different. It's about doing it over and over again, educating investors, equipping them with the necessary skills and tools, and assisting them develop a plan or an approach for themselves to ensure financial stability. I think the fact that the associations are coming together and forming a group to look at, as I suppose it's self-regulation, it's market regulation. They're looking at where these scams are happening. Again, very focused on investors' interest and investors' protection, and get ahead rather than it becomes an after the fact, when investor has lost money, or the investor is running to the SC to complain, or if it's a scam, they're running to other agencies to complain. This is a preventive action. So I think I again acknowledge and laud the industry for the associations for coming together to do that.
I think that's very, it's a very outstanding contribution on their part, because even they themselves recognize that they have to work together with the SC to avoid investors getting hurt, or the regulator stepping in at a much later stage. And at the end of the day, it is the recognition that we need to build trust and confidence and investor protection. It is a recognition that we are in it all together, that we have the same objectives in that space. So being mindful of the time, and perhaps I'd just like for you to share your thoughts. You have actually highlighted quite a lot of things. There's a lot of work that's being done for this space of the capital market, and as this recognition that this is a space that we need to grow. What else in the longer term do you think that the SC would want to consider, or is thinking about? Or if you had your own wish list for the industry players, what would you like to share your thoughts on that?
I think, I suppose, personally, I would speak about where I think advisory needs to come in. It needs to be the bridge connecting people to their life goals. I think as simple as it sounds, I think at the very basic foundation, that's what needs to happen. It then needs to connect. This is the sector that then connects to the various products that are available. It certainly should be given importance. I think the role of the regulator, both the SC and Bank Negara, through the various initiatives that's being carried out. My personal wish list would be that, to see this be the next growth trajectory, because I think it will be the connector between what's available and what is I think it's a supply and demand side, where the supply of products and the demand of the investor is intermediated by this sector. It's and done very professionally with the interest of the investor, and of course it is not risk free. I think risk cannot be avoided all the time. It should just be managed. So that would be my thoughts on it.
I think that's a really very good optimistic note. The recognition of the growth trajectory. I've always slipped on that one, right? So the potential, and also the critical role that this group plays. And I like your words where you say it is a connectivity as well. and that connectivity has to be honoured and can be capitalized on
Because
as well.
just I suppose what it's going to be prevalent amongst us, and I know we've spoken about the health crisis. I think even prior to the health crisis, we realized that we are in a completely new environment. You are seeing low interest rates, low growth, the aging population, the need to save for retirement, higher health costs, higher living costs. I think what would be the common feature of all this? The ability to manage one's savings and manage one's life through from the financial perspective.
I get that. So on that note, thank you very much for making time available, and also to thank the SC for the efforts that the SC has taken in terms of, and I love your choice phrase about this public-private partnership. I think that sort of envelopes all the initiatives that are coming forth. And so with that, thank you, and also thank you to AFA. Joshua, over